Hey guys, and welcome back to another season of Discovery Phase 2 gold farming video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you the top 10 gold farms to do in Season of Discovery Phase 2. And there are some really good farms coming in this video. Before we get into it, I'd like to say a huge thank you to everyone that has gotten a copy of my Season of Discovery Gold Guide. It really means a lot. This is a guide that I constantly update all the way throughout Season of Discovery. If you want to check it out, it is linked down below. So the first farm that we're going to be talking about, and they're in no particular order, is the Wildvine farm in Stranglethorn Vale. So the mob's located right here, and the item that we're farming for is the Wildvine. This is used in a bunch of the professions to make some really good gear for Phase 2. So they have a really good price. The mobs you want to be farming are the skull splitter mobs. Now there is melee mobs, there is range mobs. As long as they are the skull splitter mobs, they will have a chance at dropping the Wildvine. Now these are very easy to farm. The only downside is that they're in STV, so if the PvP event is on, make sure that you opt out of the PvP event. On top of that, there may be a bit of PvP at the zone, but this is by far the best spot to farm the Wildvines, just because of how many mobs there are in this location. So you'll pretty much never run out of mobs to be farming for the Wildvine if you do it over in STV. There's a few other locations that you can do it, but this seems to have the most amount of mobs and is the best for doing it, especially on like a full pop server. So I'd highly recommend coming here and giving this a go and farming some Wildvines. Really good farm, and you also get a bunch of mage weave cloth on top of doing this farm. Moving on to the next farm, so farm 2, we have a farm over in Badlands. So this here is a really good farm to do. You can actually AoE at this farming location. So the items that we're going to be farming for is mainly solid stone, the deep rock salt, and the elemental earth. There's also some really good BOEs that you can get at this farm. So we're going to be farming the rock elemental. So that's the name of the mobs that we're farming. They're around level 39 to 40, and you can AoE these guys. They only hit you with melee, and there is a bunch of these all stacked up in a very tight area. So if you're lucky enough to have the area to yourself, you can do some really big AoE pulls and farm a bunch of these per hour, especially if you do it on a mage. There's a lot of potential for some really big AoE pulls, giving you a lot of kills per hour whilst doing this farm. They also drop some decent BOEs, so if you get lucky enough to get that, they'll really bump up the amount of gold that you can get from doing this farm. The other materials sell very quickly on the auction house though, like your solid stones. Moving on to the third farm. This is the turtle farm over in Tarnaris. So along the coastline, there's going to be a bunch of turtles. Now I would recommend having skinning for this farm. The main things that we're after is the turtle scales, the turtle meat, and the big mouth clams. You can get some of the really good pearls out of the clams. You just click on those and they have a small chance at giving you some of the pearls whilst opening them. So these are the mobs that we're going to be farming. They are around level 43, but you can still AoE farm these guys. However, all of these farms, you can do this on any single class in the game. It doesn't have to be a mage. Personally, I just play a mage. That is why I've recorded all these videos playing a mage and kind of doing some of them like AoE farming them. But for an example, if you play any other DPS class, you can just single target all of these mobs in all of the farms that I'm going to be showing you, and it works just as good. So don't be discouraged if you don't have a mage and you think you need a mage. You do not need a mage to do any of these farms. So skinning will really increase the amount of gold that you make per hour from doing this farm. These guys also drop some pretty good BOEs because they are level 43. Most of the BOEs you get from them are around like level 36 to 40, so perfect level for phase 2. Really good farm with skinning. Moving on to the fourth farm, we're going to be heading over to the Swamp of Sorrows. So at the Swamp of Sorrows, we're going to be farming for the Heart of Wild. Now this has a kind of low drop chance. I believe it's like 8% drop chance. But they're worth a lot of gold up in the auction house. These are used to craft some of the best gear and some of the coolest things with professions in phase 2. So the mobs that we're going to be farming are the swamp walkers. So these big guys right here. Now there are 2 different locations where you can farm these. So if there's competition at one spot, go over to the other spot that I showed on the picture of the map, and just juggle in between the spots depending on which spot has the most competition. You can also layer hop and find a new layer with less competition if there is competition. Overall, a really good farm to do, and they sell for a lot of gold. Moving on to the 5th farm, this is going to be over in Dust Wallow Marsh. So what we're going to be farming here is actually spider's meat. So the white spider meat. This is used to make some of the best consumable buffs, which is from the spider sausages. These are really sought after in phase 2 because it actually is one of the best consumable buffs that you can get. So a lot of people will be after that. These are the mobs that we're going to be farming. Now there are spiders outside of the cave where I'm showing right now, and there's a bunch of spiders inside of the cave. This is a really good steady gold farm. If you want to make some steady, consistent gold, you don't have to rely on any RNG whatsoever. The spider's meat drops very consistently. It's a really good gold farm, so go ahead and try this one out. Moving on to the 6th farm, we're still over in Dust Wallow Marsh, but we're going to be farming something a little bit different here. We're going to be farming the whelps. So from the whelps you can get the small flame sacks and also the dark whelpling. This is actually a toy, the dark whelpling, and it sells for a decent amount of gold up in the auction house. With this farm, I would recommend having skinning because you can also skin these mobs for a lot of extra gold whilst doing this farm. This was a really good farm. The only downside about this farm is that the mobs are spread out a fair bit, so I would recommend having a mount to do this farm. It will be a bit slow if you have to run around to finding all the mobs. It's a lot quicker and a lot better if you have a mount. This way you can just mount up and you can go from mob to mob because they are spread out quite a bit. But skinning is really recommended. Moving on to the 7th farm. This is over in Badlands. Now this is another whelp farm. So we're going to be farming the red whelplings over in Badlands. Now you can also get your small flame sacks once again, and you can also get the dark whelpling from this farm. On top of that, there are some really good BOEs that these mobs drop. A few purples that are worth a lot of gold, like a lot of gold. Obviously, skinning once again really will help out with the amount of gold that you make from this farm, just for some extra steady gold whilst doing this farm. This is a really good farm. The mobs are around level 43, and the BOEs that these guys drop are perfect level range for phase 2, and they're usually worth a lot of gold. Moving on to the 8th farm, and the 8th farm is over in Swamp of Sorrows, and this is going to be another whelpling farm. These ones are a bit lower level, but they still obviously will drop your small flame sacks, which is the main thing that is going to make the gold, and then also your tiny emerald whelping. Now the tiny emerald whelping is a toy, but it can sell for a lot of gold on the auction house. It is kind of rare and a low drop chance. That is why the price of it is so good. And now once again, skinning will really help out to have on this farm because the mobs are skinnable. Moving on to the 9th farm. The 9th farm is actually a raw gold farm in STV. So I'd recommend coming here and turning off the PvP event. This means when the PvP event starts, you won't actually be in the PvP event. So where it is located is right here in STV, and we're actually going to be farming the Basilisk. Now these guys have a really good drop table for some grey items that vendor for a lot of gold. Another thing when doing this, like many of these farms, is I'd highly recommend having skinning too. If you want more raw gold, you can just vendor the things that you skin off them, or you can throw them up on the auction house and fetch a little bit more gold from skinning. Moving on to the 10th farm. Now the 10th farm is the elemental farms over in Arathi Highlands. Now there's 4 different ones, so I'll show you every single one of them. So first of all, we have the fire elemental farm. On top of that, you'll be getting the burning charms, which are used to make the whirlwind axe, and these also sell on the auction house. So with these guys right here, they're all fire mobs. They only hit with melee, so if you have, for an example, a mage, you can actually AoE farm these guys very easily, and it's really efficient. But obviously, you do not have to be a mage to farm these guys. You can do it on any DPS class whatsoever. The mobs have around 2.6k health, so they're actually pretty easy to kill, and they're really good to AoE farm for a mage. but you can do this on any single class, so don't worry if you do not have a mage. But moving on to the next elemental farm that is also in Arathi Highlands, like all 4 of them. So the next one that we're going to be doing is which one is it? It's the elemental air farm, and you're also going to be getting the thundering charms, and these are also used once again to make the whirlwind axe. Now the whirlwind axe is pretty sought after. It's a quest. They need to hand in 8 of the charms. There's 3 different charms. They need to have 8 of each of the charms, and once they hand that in, they can actually do the quest to get the whirlwind axe. So these guys right here are really good, and the elemental air has a really good price, especially on my realm. It may be different on other realms, and then the charms also sell very quickly up on the auction house. So the next elemental farm is the elemental water farm. This is up in the top of Arathi Highlands. Now the prices on these ones are a bit lower because there's not much use for the elemental water quite yet, but you also get the charms, which is used once again to make the whirlwind axe. So they can sell on top of the elemental water. Now with the elemental water, they aren't worth too much right now because there's not much use for them. However, if you farm a bunch of these and hold on to them, they're going to be worth a lot more in future phases. So this would probably be the lower one of the elemental farms. Moving on to the 4th elemental farm, this is going to be for the elemental earth. Now there are no charms that you actually get from this one. Instead, you get solid stone. So elemental earth and solid stone is what you're going to be farming at this location right here. Now when doing this, you need to take into consideration, or just remember, that they do actually have a stun, which can get quite annoying. Especially if you're a caster, they can actually still stun you from a range. We'll see here in a second, but they can stun you from range. So as you can see, we just got knocked down for like 2 seconds, and it actually interrupts your cast, so it can get quite annoying doing this farm. So the best way to probably do this is just pull one at a time and have some big single target damage. This way you're not getting chain stunned from their stun ability, which can get very annoying, especially on a mage trying to cast Blizzard. But this is a really good farm. The solid stone sells very steadily and very quick on the auction house, and then obviously also does the elemental earth. So that is the 4 different elemental farms that are best to do in phase 2. And they're actually really good for some nice steady gold. They'll have a chance of dropping some BOEs too, but none of the BOEs come close to this next farm. So this is a bonus farm. This is a bonus RNG BOE farm. And that's right, it's going to be farming the trash in Older Man. Some of the BOEs from here are worth up to 3,000 gold each, and are absolutely insane items for phase 2 of Season of Discovery. As you can see on the screen, there is a bunch of different blue BOEs that all drop from the trash mobs. And they're all BOE, meaning they can all be posted up on the auction house. Some have better prices than the other, but the best way to do this is that you can either solo Alderman, or you can do a duo or a trio. You don't want to have a 5-man group, because that's 5 people that you're going to have to roll against on the BOEs. I found the best way to do it is around like a duo or a trio. In this clip right here, we're doing a trio, 2 mages AoE farming and a priest healing us. And this seemed pretty efficient and worked really good for us personally. We also could clear the dungeon or the trash. You don't want to be killing the bosses, but we could clear all the trash very quickly, and this seemed to be the most efficient. I did it solo, but it does take a lot of time doing it solo. But the upside about doing it solo is when you get a BOE to drop, you don't have to roll against anyone else and have a chance on missing out on that BOE. You get all of the BOEs straight to yourself. So you need to weigh, is it worth partnering up with some people to make it a bit easier and quicker, or do you just go ahead and solo this yourself, which will take a lot longer, but then you have all of the BOEs to yourself. It's a really good farm if you are into farming for RNG and having a chance at some big items. But that was it for the top 10 gold farms in Season of Discovery Phase 2. If you'd like to learn more about making gold in Season of Discovery, from all the best methods, tips and tricks, and all the best gold farms, you can find that inside of my Season of Discovery Gold Guide. This is constantly updated and will be in the next phase and the last phase with all of the best methods on how to make gold in Season of Discovery. You also get access to a private Discord where we help each other out with making gold in Season of Discovery, from farming and flipping. Until the next one, guys, take care.